I would like to do a recap before I get into the new content that I'm sharing in this video. Because of the feedback that I'm getting from the people that are closest to me, I'm a little concerned. I'm getting this pushback, if you may, concerning the events and the things that are unfolding during COVID, as though this is an isolated event. These are special circumstances, when the videos that I'm coming up with, especially the cure from cancer, happened way before COVID was even thought of. Here is what we do know, in fact, about how the powers that be operate. They, in fact, do allow public sharing of controversial information, as long as it stays hidden and on a minor scale released through unpopular media outlets. But once it goes viral, it is flat out censored. In an effort not to be repetitive, because I'm going to talk more about this in a few moments, but they're not interested in any cure, from COVID all the way down to Alzheimer's. It may be the hardest to understand how anyone can gloss over this one. They criminalize anyone that comes against their agenda with a cure that affects their bottom line. What I see is an extreme spirit of pride and greed, working through a system with a mob mentality and slander to punish someone that's doing good, keeping children with their parents, loved ones together, and ending pain and suffering. This situation runs deep. They have an agenda and they have the means to accomplish it, with propaganda that is reiterated by governments, the media, lawmakers, and then infiltrating the minds of individuals. I'm not going to say that I know what the agenda is, although I've heard that the book of Revelations talks about it extensively. But I do know that whatever they're doing, it's centered around and driven by wealth, and they will get that by any means necessary. I have a lot to say. Consider the content of this video as though it was the resume for a candidate that was applying for a position as the sole caretaker of yourself, your children, or a loved one. Would you hire them for the job? If you look through the content of this channel, you will notice that all the videos center around health in the most practical sense. How to heal, how to support the body, the benefits of healing and supporting the body, and learning that we have more control over our health conditions than we think. It wasn't until 2020, during the pandemic, when I came across the video regarding the cure for cancer, that I realized that there was a much bigger secret health issue that affects us all. I don't want to count the number of people that have said after watching the Brzezinski's Cure for Cancer video that there was nothing new. Yeah, and what? Okay, it's about the money. We already knew that. It's the complacency of the and what attitude, as though there's nothing that can be done, and there's certainly not anything they're going to take upon themselves to do, not to even share and spread the video and its important information. It's the complacency of the no action of the so what that they're counting on. Remember, one of the tactics used in accomplishing the agenda is the controlling of information. Who gets to know what? There's no action when the information is not shared, so advocacy groups are not formed, lives aren't saved, and change is not made. By just sharing and getting the conversation going, perhaps we will all be reminded that we actually control the situation with our dollars. Change will occur by the way that we spend our money. I can't tell you how many changes I would have made years ago if I had had this valuable information. So the least measure that we can take to go against this agenda of pride, power, and greed is to share the information that they're trying to hide and conceal and censor. Even though you may not have cancer or have a loved one with cancer, what's happening to the people in the video and what's happened to me is happening to you. They are not just applying their philosophy about life to cancer. So the way that they are governed by the spirits of pride and greed infiltrates every area of our existence. The way that they behave in regards to cancer is also the way that they behave in regards to every medical condition. These are their statistics. 1.6 million people are affected by cancer every year. It kills 600,000 people. This is between the elderly and the infant. That's approximately 1,643 people a day and 68 people every hour. If they can disregard the cure for cancer, the second leading cause of death in the United States. Being well aware of the pain and suffering of the patients and their families, they still classify Brzezinski's cure as experimental. This means that it's not available to the common man. It means that this proven and life-saving treatment can only be used in certain circumstances and by individuals that can afford it. It's also not covered under traditional medical insurance policies. Understanding this is a defining factor for me and causes me to be leery about every move they make. They cannot care about COVID or the deaths that it has caused, because COVID, which is currently highly publicized, has not made the same deadly impact that cancer has, which still exists and is allowed to quietly go on and cost lives in the background. Still want to employ them and allow them to be the sole and primary caretaker of yourself and your loved one? There are some twisted and sinister schemes that have played out across all the videos and all the information that I've shared about the way that the powers that be move. In the Brzezinski's Cure documentary, there is a subliminal attack upon a parent's choice or control about the care that they provide to their child, and a redefining of the concept of child abuse. They don't want us to know about information that will allow us to properly care for our children. Instead, they aggressively steer parents towards unnecessary treatments that will cause pain, stress, and death to innocent children. So a parent that utilizes the principles of spare the rod, spoil the child as a form of discipline is an abuser, but they can't suggest an innocent child that is already in pain and suffering to surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy that literally fries and destroys the child's insides. Sinister behavior and even more child abuse is realized after watching the unavoidably unsafe video. We see that there is no recourse or retribution for the damages that vaccines have caused and are causing to people and children. We see that vaccine companies are granted immunity from prosecution in the name of making money and for scientific exploration. We also see that there are no safeguards in place to ensure the safety of the vaccines that they're increasingly enforcing upon ourselves and our children. Instead, vaccine companies are allowed to pursue monopolies through these patents where they create new substances and ingredients that are toxic that are not being monitored by the government. And there is a plan to vaccinate us all, which I'll talk about a little later when I get into the new information that I'd like to share. Still need convincing? The sinister nature of the actors in this agenda was blatant when the information about the plans to move forward with legislation that would allow 11-year-olds to make major medical decisions without the knowledge or consent of their parents. This information was discussed in the public but hidden video. Perhaps the most opportunistic display of the actors in this agenda is the way that they've maneuvered during this COVID pandemic. Although no one knows the source of COVID, several researchers and biological scientists have stated that this virus is not naturally occurring. In the video, by accident or on purpose, I discussed some of Dr. Merritt's findings regarding some of the possible threats and opportunities that exist with COVID and the utilization of this new and experimental vaccine. After listening to Dr. Merritt's informative interview, I wanted to get a better understanding of how the vaccine works. Then I came across the information about the use of nanotechnology within the vaccine. If you do your research, you will find that mRNA vaccines and nanotechnology and its uses were in the works more than 10 years ago. So, some time ago, the powers that be have invested in these technologies, and during this COVID season have maneuvered to find cause to fast-track them and test them out on the human population. In my getting knowledge about the mRNA vaccines, I understand that this new technology is being used to save time of growing the typical vaccine in the cells of animals. Although just as toxic, they're able to cut the time required to develop vaccines in half, as well as test out technology that has no limitations on its use. This is outlined in the video called It's a No-No. With the opportunity to create fear through the mass marketing by major media outlets that spread doctored information about infection rates and the imminent threat of death, which most Americans have evaded or overcome in the past year. There seems to be an opportunity to see just how far they can make us bend by creating desperation by shutting down the economy, and then passive-aggressively enforcing social distancing and mask wearing before we can get the things we need, come together as a community, and open up the economy. From the video, Masking Trivial Demands, you will find that there is strong evidence that there is no intention to stop mask wearing or social distancing, even for the vaccinated parties. After watching the reference material, which is in the description box of this video, you will see former military Dr. Merritt reveal a real psychological mental control exercise where the controlling group enforces trivial demands on captives as a form of mind control. The most telling and a great jump-off point in this figurative interview process is the Plandemic documentary, where insider Dr. Judy Mikovits gives personal insight and accounts into the practices of a certain scientific organization within the federal government. She exposes the activities of this organization for the past 20 years or so in regards to the suppression of information that would save lives, the tampering and genetically modifying of animal viruses to be implanted or infected into humans, as well as confirmed suspicions about AIDS, Ebola, and COVID. You would really have to watch the Plandemic documentary to fully understand the scope of everything that's happened. But all of this and more has occurred under the head of the organization, Fauci, who misappropriated $3.7 million of taxpayers' money to finance a laboratory in Wuhan, China, to continue research that had been shunned and halted by the lawmakers in the United States, who is working both sides of the biological scientific arena to accumulate wealth through the use of patents. For those major players that had the misfortune to stand in their way, much like Dr. Brzezinski with his cure, sabotage, bullying, cutthroat actions, and conniving activity were on display as Dr. Mikovits hashes through her ordeal in the documentary for being a whistleblower that wanted to do the right thing and see the right things done. I mentioned in a now deleted video how there's distractions, how the agenda through mass media plays one party against the other, Democrat against Republican, as though they're the only two political parties out there. But that's a different conversation. But through all these videos, we see that there's a much bigger issue when presidents come and go, but the heads of these organizations within the federal government reign endlessly, gaining power and influence to push their agenda, developing diverse networks of relationships with billionaires, countries, world organizations that service their interests. The activities of some of these in-the-background organizations was revealed in the video The Truth, where I outlined the Plandemic documentary. All coincidences? No. There is a strong indication that the things that have been forecasted are being quietly worked out and infrastructure put in place in the background. Do we want to continue to go along with these wicked actors by supporting them with our inactivity of not sharing important information that exposes their agenda? Do we want to continue to employ them with our spending habits? The events that have been forecasted do not have to occur in this generation. The information and activities that have been brought to light in 2020 means that there's still time to make changes. And the first step to making changes is acknowledging the important information that has been revealed by sharing it. After all that collaborating from different sources in different points in time, still not convinced? I'm not getting the vaccine, and my lifestyle supports me remaining healthy. But we all have free choice, or do we? My number one concern since the start of the conversation about vaccinations has been forced vaccines. By not educating ourselves and getting important information out there, we will fall victim to the current objectives and goals of this agenda. Through continued marketing propaganda, PR ploys, and soft advertising, they are revealing their plans to set up infrastructure to systematically and passive-aggressively enforce vaccinations. Here's the thumbnail for my information source for the information that I would like to share. You can watch the whole video. There's a lot of marketing propaganda, PR ploys, and self-advertising. As always, I'm serving as a jump-off point, providing the meat of the information. Highlighted in this CNBC video, will COVID-19 vaccine passports work? Is one of the mechanisms in which vaccines will be systematically enforced by tracking through the health passport. If adapted, as you will deduce, non-vaccinated groups will be barred from access to public facilities, traveling, and employment. Only the vaccinated group, verified and tracked by the health passport, will be allowed to be a part of society. They are propagating the need for this new system using the same narratives that they've repeated throughout the shutdown and the pandemic, citing the economic crises that resulted from the social distance shutdown of the economy. Remember Trump's revealing press conference about government spending during this shutdown, financial crises, failing economy?
It's called the COVID relief bill, but it has almost nothing to do with COVID. There's $1.3 billion for Egypt gender programs in Pakistan, $40 million for the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., which is not even open for business, $1 billion for the Smithsonian, and an additional $154 million for the National Gallery of Art, like Gulf of Mexico. A provision to promote the breeding of fish.
Using DuckDuckGo, I was able to find a random source for the complete original version of the press conference detailing the government's lavish and impractical spending during this time of hardship for the American people. No income, evictions, job closings, and starvation. Very revealing. You would want to watch the complete press conference, which is linked below. Will COVID-19 health passports work? The very tone of the video's title is misleading. Make no mistake about it, they've already determined and set in place their next course of actions. After all of the distracting fluff marketing and advertisement, it's not until 3 minutes and 30 seconds in their intentions are made clear, which is revealed in this audio captured from the video.
And more importantly, only about 3% of the US population has been immunized so far.
Our focus should be on getting people vaccinated. Once we get enough people vaccinated that we can actually then think we can leverage that vaccinated pool as something that we can use, that's when I think the immunization certificates become something we can talk about.
That should happen around the time 40 to 50% of the population have been vaccinated.
So did you hear it also? There is no, well, I'm going to keep my decision not to get the COVID vaccine to myself. What everybody else chooses to do has nothing to do with me. I'm going to worry about myself. After 50% of the population has been vaccinated, they are going to start systematically pushing using the health passport to force the remainder of the population to get inoculated. Perhaps a real sign of the times is what happens when they're successful with the Everyone Get Vaccinated campaign and then with the rollout of the health passport system. At about 9 minutes and 38 seconds in, there is a real revelation regarding continued and expanded use of this tracking system.
What we design and build today is going to have longevity past this. This may have utility in routine immunization. This may have utility in a whole host of use cases outside of healthcare.
We should be leading the world on this problem. So I think we have.
Remember, figures show that less than 1% of the infected die of the virus. By creating desperation and fear, they are shaping the decision paths of many that are not informed, but are consumed with the getting back to normal by complying with trivial demands. I ask again, What is the point of vaccinations if they only work once everyone is vaccinated? So for this reason, they are baiting Americans into voluntarily relinquishing our freedom. See that the health passport seeks to track everyone and ultimately penalize law-abiding tax-paying citizens that refuse this vaccination and others. Oh, and that last blurb regarding the United States leading the world with health passports is a farce. This very system is already mandated in China and is managed through a person's cell phone. Please share this video. Thanks for watching.